Welcome back to MSP Confidential, everybody. It's Friday. We've got some very special guests joining us today. Co-founders of Slide, Austin McChord and Michael Fass. Guys, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming to hang out for a few minutes and hopefully letting me ask you a bunch of interesting questions. Welcome and pretty exciting times. Lots going on. Launch of a new company. How are you guys feeling?
Excited.
Great.
Well, I loved on the sign up page for Slide that you had this a disclaimer or checkbox. By signing up, you agree to join the future of BCDR. So let's start there. What is the future of BCDR? How are you thinking about this?
I don't know, Michael, you want to take it or you want me to take this one?
You go ahead.
All right. I think the answer is just that current BCDR is in the past. And if you look at almost all the leading solutions out there, they're like 20 years old or more. And like, I should know, I made one of them. And when we were kind of looking at all this stuff, we realized that a huge transition has sort of occurred technologically, and that you could start over and build something that's dramatically better. And so for Slide, we really thought about that at every single step of the way of like, if we were to start over, how could you do this better? And it starts at a hardware level in being all flash. Then you think about the software and how you would do something that's entirely cloud driven. And then how you sew all the pieces together. There's a whole litany of next generation technologies that I could spend 2 hours talking about that we incorporate into this. And really what it means is that we've built the BCDR for the next 20 years instead of trying to patch up and keep this, crazy house of cards together that is all these existing BCDRs that are like 20 years old.
Mm. So, I mean, you've done the backup thing before, as most people know, and what was the compelling desire to go and do it again? I mean, aside from the excitement of starting a new company, of course, which I think we can all get behind, but why backup specifically?
Well, so
Or
I
go
guess
ahead,
I'll
Dave.
take this one. We were fortunate enough to be part of a company that made a big difference in the space. And it was largely because of the values of the company and how we treated our team, how we treated our customers, every touch point of the business. And that created an exceptionally motivated team of people who worked with us, and it translated into every single interactions we would have with our MSP partners, whether we were apologizing for doing something wrong or celebrating, taking care of an MSP, having their backs in a disaster scenario, whatever the situation, and and that was the foundation of success that we experienced
Hmm.
for a long time. And growing a large ecosystem, and at the end of the day, when the company ended up as it ended up, we thought that there was a unique opportunity to recreate the magic. And we see a lot of these businesses now in the MSP space that are operating with lots of different tech stacks in place. As Austin described, a lot of them are kind of old. Um, they cut their budgets because they got to, they're really after, making a lot of money versus taking care of the ecosystem, and that sense of rising tides lift all ships.
Hmm.
And, they move engineering offshore. The best people leave, and customer support is not invested in. And these were the elements of our success in the past. And so we thought that there was an opportunity not only to deal with unfinished business and recreate the magic, but that the landscape had changed enough that it created an opportunity for us to create this new modern product.
So I'll come back to the comment Austin made about if I had to start all over again, because I feel like if you walk through any MSP industry event in the hallways, you'll always hear, "Oh, if I got to start a new MSP, I'd do everything again this way." And there's always this idea of like, well, why couldn't you just change what you're doing right now? And so what were maybe the big threads of starting over that you wanted to pull on that you would do differently? I think that's sort of the question. Obviously, the tech is one component of it. The tech has changed so much, but tell me a bit about those big threads of starting over.
I mean, I think the vast majority of the changes that we want to make are technical. And if you look at like what are the things that we want to keep, everything cultural. And so the culture that made Datto and made Datto successful is what we would love to recreate and to bring back. And so that's the thing that we want to make the same. On the technology side, that's where the changes are, and just the technology has moved a huge amount. And that when you run a really big organization, it's very hard to make massive technological changes.
Mm.
And so, because we get to start fresh, we're able to make a bunch of technological changes, and we don't have to deal with, how would we propagate those changes down to 100,000 devices? How would this affect people on 6 continents? And instead, we're starting for the first time over. And so it means that we can pick a new tech stack without having to worry about sort of dealing with the transition along the way.
So, Michael, you mentioned culture. Austin, you mentioned culture as well. And at the height before the acquisition, Datto was what, a couple thousand people, just around there.
Yeah.
And Michael, you were chief people officer at the time. I mean, what is the transition perspective wise mentally to go from some scale at 2,000 people to a startup again? Because I imagine it's one thing when these things change or build or organically evolve, and you don't just necessarily install a culture, but how are you thinking about sort of going back from scale to startup?
The energy is equal but different. We've been spending almost 2 years building this thing
Mm.
with super talented people who share our values and want to, as I say, rekindle that magic. And so there's the excitement factor and the energy factor is as high as can be. And of course, the problems that we're solving are totally different, and the environment in which we're solving them, it's totally different. And so getting back to building something from scratch it's just a unique opportunity. There's more time to really think about what you want to be rather than what you have to do to change in midstream. And as long as the energy that we're putting into it is of a similar nature that we had throughout the run we had, we've been very engaged. The team has been incredibly engaged, and the work has been incredibly joyous.
I love that. What has it been like for the team to keep this under wraps for 2 years? Because I imagine there's a lot of anxiety now getting to, finally launch the company and putting this out into the world. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, there's this like I'm sure Austin has a good way of thinking about it too, because he started too, right? This is my first time starting one of these, but it's this sort of I've got a secret mentality that is part of the excitement factor, and anxiety is healthy if directed in the right place. So I'd love to hear what Austin has to say about this.
I I mean, I think it's you you set your sights on something, and the idea that it takes 2 years to get there is really painful. And you wish that you could get it done immediately because you see the market. And I think the thing is that as soon as you pick your market and you pick the problem that you want to solve, what you feel bad about is that there's all these people out there and like the problem is not being solved well. And you see these changes that are happening or this thing that's happening. And you're like, oh my God, I wish my product was out there because I could fix this for them. And I think that's the biggest frustration. You just want to be like, hey, it doesn't have to be awful. It doesn't have to suck. Like it could be better. And we figured out a way to make it better. And so having to keep that close to the chest for a really long time is like unfun. But I think the flip side is that we've done that, and it means that when we announce, we're not announcing something that's coming soon. We're not announcing something that like will ship someday. We're not announcing that you can wait for something. We're announcing and saying like, there are many people using this now. and you can start using it right away. So it's like back in the day, when it used to be Steve Jobs and it was like, hey, look, here's the new iPhone and you can buy it this afternoon. It's that kind of announcement. And that feels so much better than the like, oh, it's coming this fall sometime, maybe kind of thing. And so the fact that we're ready and we're shipping, that makes all of the anxiety and all of the, keeping it bottled up worth it.
I
And
love
there's
it.
one caveat I would add there, and that is that not only is it ready, but it's going to make your life better. So we're
You
excited.
wouldn't build it if it wouldn't make your life better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're excited for the community to be able to see what our pilot partners have seen.
Now, in 2 years, I feel like, especially at the rate of change we're going through the last couple of years, a lot of things are maybe different, even from 2 years ago to now. Have you seen sort of the tech maybe evolve underneath your own feet as you were kind of sort of working to get the solution out to market?
I actually think like we've been pretty good at predicting where the arrow was going to go. And so like we made choices like that we're going to build the entire system off flash storage. And like that felt very scary from could we buy enough? Would it be priced at the right price point? And like those prices have trended in the right direction. And like that bet made sense. We made a bet on AMD versus Intel for like which chipset to optimize for, who's going to have the better chip. And we made those choices 2 years ago. And like those choices have really panned out and been like, yeah, we've thought about the right thing. So in that sense, like it's actually one of those things that the fact that we worked at a really big organization and it took 2 years to do anything because like big organizations is just so hard to move stuff means that like your ability to see around the corner like had to get honed and get a little bit better. And so then to apply it in an organization that can move and change very, very rapidly, like is awesome and like so much more satisfying. And just the distance that we can cover is incredible.
Mm. I think there's definitely MSPs have maybe a preference for founder technical led organizations in our space. Just the technology leaning nature that technicians seem to have in this space, and I'm wondering if you've noticed the differences in speed, in ability to execute, from the 2,000 person organization back to the startup, and what are you kind of planning or designing org wise to keep that iteration or that rate of change moving forward, I suppose.
I think like a lot of it is just stay small and like avoid the bureaucracy and go a long distance with the people that you have. Uh, and that's really helpful. And there's these trade-offs because on the flip side, like when you get really big, like you can do really big things, you can move, mountains, but when you're small, you can run around them. And so like just making sure that we keep that nimbleness as long as we can. I don't know, Michael, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, you go back to sort of that Jeff Bezos theme of the two pizza team and how much can get done with a small group of highly motivated, experienced, and curious people. That the folks that have been building the product are iterating very rapidly, and they produce great outcomes every couple days. And so watching that, well, number one, seeing how um, it might feel like a simple product, but it's quite complex under the hood. And seeing how much goes into each iteration, and how well a small team is able to move together as a team has been a really amazing for me. I'm not technical, and so watching them operate along with Austin, who's also writing code, um, has been just an amazing experience for me.
Hmm. I think there's a lot of parallels between if like we talked about resilience, the backup space thinks a lot about resilience, security space thinks a lot about resilience. And I heard a great thing recently about resilience, which is resilience has a great connotation, but often feels uncomfortable or not great when you're going through it. And so I want to ask you about resilience in the context of backup. And even in the context of culture, because I think this is the interesting challenge for a team that's moving very fast and growing very quickly, is that there's like a need for resilience at all levels of the company. And just curious how you think about resilience.
I'll take a first shot at this one. Uh, I've found that in building this, there are multitudes of obstacles that come up that folks who've been doing this a while really grapple with and struggle with and can't figure out for time. And it's really a testament to the quality of people and the happiness factor of the team to see them power through difficult problems and then come out the other end and solve them as a team with elegant solutions that no one would realize were so difficult. And that comes down to, in my view, resilience in an environment like this. Really, it largely comes down to culture. Because if you feel like someone's got your back and you have one another's back, the sum is way larger, or the total is way larger than the sum of its parts, or whatever the anecdote goes like. And so that's the source of a lot of the resilience, is them working together and solving problems together and going through the ups and downs of difficulties and coming out the other end.
Yeah, Austin, maybe you can add a technical nuance to that. The I guess the emotional and evolution of the teams as they're overcoming some of these big challenges. I suppose that brings a lot of that culture together, so to speak. But what are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
I mean, I think that you have to live it. Like, culture's less about what you write down and more about what you do. And so living it and expressing it. And I think that a lot of it, to start any business, requires an irrational amount of optimism. And like, you have to believe, and you have to wake up and believe. And like, achieving data was the impossible. Doing it again, like in a completely different sort of economic time, in a different position, like, is equally impossible. And yet we believe that we've done something really good, and we're excited about it, and we're aligned and delivering for the MSPs. But it's that optimism that like the future is going to be better. People are going to want to buy this product because it's going to be better. It's going to make their lives better.
Hmm.
And the fact that it makes money and puts food on the table for people, like, that's secondary to the idea that like we've done something that's going to be better, that is going to make everybody else better. And so that optimism is kind of what drives us and what gets us excited every day coming to work.
Yeah, it can't be just about money. And I think that comes back to sort of what the opportunity really is, right? Because Datto wasn't just about money. It never was. And it just so happened to be the most successful MSP technology company in the history of the world, right? So, making money is an outcome from having the right inputs and the right motivations to do things. And we're here to get back to that magic, as we described, right? And build a better build a better product for MSPs, and give them the, the the feeling that they are being looked after again, which I don't think they've felt for a long time.
And the
Yeah,
magic is the team. Like,
the team.
hire the right team, give them the space, and like hire people who are irrational optimists who believe in the MSPs, and give them the authority to make it right, get it done.
Yeah, the team are the ones who are building that product, and then the team are the ones that are interfacing with the partners every day, and they're that touch point, and you know it you can feel it. And the folks that we talk to, the folks that are using the product now, our current partners, they feel it, and it's because of the people, and it's because of what we're bringing to the table and the motivations we're bringing to the table.
Hmm. How are you guys thinking about maybe pressure? And I asked that question simply because I guess in a way Datto maybe set the bellwether for what success should mean to you guys. And, there's perhaps some pressure that comes along with that. What's the conversation around, getting to that same pivot point, so to speak?
I guess I would think about it as Datto sets the floor. Like that we need, if we're gonna go do it again, we're gonna do better. And it's less about the scale and more about the MSP experience, more about being able to deliver for them, and more about what kind of products we can build. And what's exciting is that we have access to an incredible team and some people that we've learned about along the way, and that there are new tools and new technologies that allow us to build even better, more awesome stuff for MSPs. And so the only reason that we would choose to do any of this is because we think that data is the starting point and that there's so much more that could be built.
Yeah. You said rational optimists there,
Irrational.
Austin. Yeah. And so I'm curious to ask you what that there's probably it sounds like there's maybe a framework that you've built around that concept that maybe you could speak to a little bit more.
I don't think it's a strong framework as much as it is just coming in and wanting things to be better, hoping that they'll be better, pushing to make them better, and optimistic that we'll get there and it will be able to deliver these features or we'll be able to think of these things or that we can see around the corner technology wise. Just all those pieces, like you kind of just have to run, jump, and believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to that pressure piece, and that optimism, that irrational optimism piece, they go together. The the pressure from the outside and the and, are is much less than what we feel as a team. What motivates us, right? We have an objective. We've been working on this in stealth for as long as we have, with only ourselves to keep ourselves motivated, and that and that level of motivation is a proxy for the pressure we've placed on ourselves, right? And so we have an objective to do something that's unique and special, and the rest will take care of itself if we keep the motivation pure.
So maybe a touchy question, but you both had a successful exit, obviously from Datto, and you're in a situation where you come across a problem, you can throw money at it. So is the cross section between building something that grows, truly fulfilling the needs of the MSPs as those things evolve, versus just throwing money at the problems, crutch or privilege? What do you think is the overarching thought there?
Privilege. But also, like, that's not what we did here. Like, it's nice that we know that, like, we're going to go home and we don't have to worry about whether or not our mortgage is going to be paid for. But at the same time, like, just throwing a ton of money at this problem would not have created nearly as good a solution as the process that we went through. And the amount of money put into Slide to get to here is like vanishingly small compared to many other startups. And so some of the privileges that, like, I have nice office space. We can get people nice laptops. But beyond that, it's not like a team of hundreds of people was hired to co-design this. It's instead a few really great, really smart people that want to be really thoughtful about delivering for MSPs. And that's again goes back to people and culture way more than money. And so of all the startups that I've been involved in, like, this one is probably the most efficient from a cash standpoint, in that it just doesn't take that much money. It actually takes a lot of that passion and irrational optimism.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it's a business. We are not a nonprofit, right? So we do want to build a business, and we think that the business outcomes will result from the right inputs that we're trying to put in here. And at the end of the day, we're not doing this for charity. We're doing this to build something that is a profitable business. So we're
Yeah.
mindful of what we spend on things, and we're mindful of being efficient and doing things in a sensible way.
Yeah. Now you both have also been heavily involved with the Outsiders Fund. And this fund has invested in many companies very much outside of perhaps the MSP or SaaS space, even for that matter. So I'm curious if there's been some models, some things that you've kind of picked up from industries outside of our own that you thought, wow, this is really correlates here, interestingly. And that's the first question. The second question is, how is the experience with the Outsiders Fund driving a bit of your thoughts around time horizon specifically? But let's start with the first question. You know, models from outside industries in the new BCDR.
I don't think that there's like a ton of difference. If anything, like it's reinforced the things that made Datto successful and that we hope that will make Slide successful tend to be the same things that make companies that Outsiders Fund invests in successful as well. And so people, culture, building things that people want, that make the world better, like all of those kind of overlap. And believe it or not, like you can solve problems for MSPs or you can solve problems for semiconductors or cattle industry over top those same values. And so that's the piece that just sort of that gets run in even more of like, wow, these things matter that much more. And like helps anchor sort of your thinking as you go to build the business.
Yeah, I often feel like I'm able to take a lot of the lessons I learned from, the years working at Datto and through that whole journey of scale from, 100 employees to 2,000 plus employees, global company. And I think of it more, that experience has helped inform a lot of the folks we work with in our portfolio companies, because there are so many similarities, as Austin just described. It's all about the people. It's all about their motivation and their how they treat their constituents, their partners, their customers, their employees, and how those folks all interact with the world and what they're trying to achieve. And I think we've learned a lot of positive lessons in the Datto years that translate pretty well to a lot of the startups that we end up working with at Outsiders.
Hmm. Now, Michael, you said the term unfinished business earlier, and I'm curious if you've thought about that in the context of the funding choices you make for Slide going forward, and how people might perceive the time horizon potentially of what an investment in a company like this means overarchingly. So, any comments on that?
Yeah. So when I think of unfinished business, I think about like we were a public company. We went public. And part of that whole motivation around that was to continue to grow and build a great company that had an impact. And we didn't get all the way as far as we wanted to go. And a lot of folks that were on that adventure with us, whether they were partners or folks that worked at the business, felt a loss. And one of the key motivations here is recreating that which, and you can't recreate that which you lost, but recreating something new that takes from those important elements that we care about, that we can build upon for the future. And in terms of time horizon, we're trying to build a great company. And so I don't know how long it takes to build a great company, but it takes a while. So we're in it for the long haul, and we're just starting. So we're not really thinking about time horizons. We're thinking about building, and we have a lot of things to build.
Yeah. Austin, any comments from you on that?
I mean, I think it largely aligned in that the feeling was that Datto going public, it felt like we had achieved escape velocity and had entered sort of permanent orbit, and we didn't quite make it. And so that was not the desired outcome of the business that we built. And it was one of those things where like you don't wake up and think like, oh man, I'll go back and I'll start something again in this space. But instead, we saw the technological land shift. You can kind of see where it's going, and you realize that like the current stewards aren't keeping up. And so then you actually almost feel like you have a duty to go start this thing and build it, because if they don't keep up for long enough, the entire MSP industry suffers. And it's actually one of the things that like has been important to us, in that like when we build this, like we're being really open about all the integrations and how we work together, and like really trying to be a good neighbor and good partner in that sense. And we hope that we can help continue to push the MSP industry forward as a whole, because we think that, that holds them back when the companies that build tools for them aren't pushing the technology forward either.
Yeah. So I think that's an appropriate segue to get into technology a little bit, because I think this is a part that most people are interested in learning a little bit about anyways. And by the time this airs, there'll be lots out there and people sort of consuming a lot of the information already from the official sources. But as this wouldn't be a 2025 podcast without some mention of AI. And so I want to ask a little bit about AI, because in the shift of AI to platform, do you think AI might become one of the stewards of how you think about technology? Are you thinking about big data sets? Are you thinking about contextual use of AI across these interesting sort of multi-tenant, multi-client data sets? What is your thoughts on AI?
So a couple of pieces. And I would start with a values component that like we don't own the client's data. The clients own the client's data. So we're not going to be doing anything with that data, certainly not going to be like summing it together and trying to create some of our own thing out of that. But at the same time, the clients may want to do stuff with their data. But the only way that that data is valuable is if it's accessible. And the challenge that you have with today's systems is that actually pulling back old backups, getting full copies of systems takes forever. And that's a nature of how that information is stored. And the fact that we built a system where we are insanely performant, we can saturate a 10 gigabit NIC. We can just move so much information so fast, means that that data is at the ready to be ingested by AI systems when our customers and clients want to do so. But I want to be clear that like the data that we store belongs to the customer, not to Slide. And one thing that we've done that's actually a really big deal is we spend a ton of time and energy on encryption to ensure that it's not a bolt-on feature as to how it got added in our past experience, but instead is core from the ground up. And so the entire key management process, everything that happens is encrypted on a Slide device. And the data is always encrypted at rest. It can never not be encrypted at rest. It is end-to-end encrypted. And so that meant actually solving a whole bunch of technological problems to prevent people having to deal with sort of the data storage tax, that encrypted data is not compressible. And so we were able to basically solve that issue so that you can still get all the benefits of compression and deduplication, et cetera, but you can have this data encrypted and eventually with keys that you can control yourself end-to-end, so that when clients do decide that they want to make AI part of their workflow, the Slide data sets are there to help them.
So back to the resiliency topic, in this time now, in the context of the actual backup technology, I feel like Datto, one of the big things about Datto was maybe the inverse chain technology it had and the ability for any one particular snapshot to be fairly resilient on its own without messing up an entire chain of backups. How is that different in this new order?
So essentially that comes from using ZFS.
Yeah, we
which is a
leverage
file system.
DFS. Yeah.
And so we use the exact same ZFS file system. And it's come a long ways since the last time that we interacted with it, which is kind of cool that there's a lot more that we can do with it now.
So Slide is predicated on appliances, obviously, and I think people have been saying, when is on-prem going to die? Has on-prem died? Is it going to die? What are your thoughts on on-prem?
So I think on-prem is relatively durable, and that by and large, the people who end up moving to the cloud, like it can get pretty pricey. And that balance is tough. I actually think it will be interesting too with an AI workload component, like whether or not you do want to move that on-prem or not, just because like buying the AI compute cycles to run locally is exponentially cheaper than buying them in the cloud. That said, the architecture of Slide is designed future forward. And so like we have architecturally everything that's there to support cloud-only systems. But the way that we want to roll out is very deliberate. And so our first iteration of products for the market are targeted towards sort of the most forgotten segment, which is that on-prem. And we know that there's a large market there, and that's somewhere where we feel like people can really feel a massive step change improvement. And then we'll roll out the cloud stuff when we're ready.
Yeah, what I would say is that so we went after the problem that no one would go after, right? It's the hardest problem to solve. It's the hybrid cloud environment is has a lot of moving parts and requires an incredible amount of skill, patience, time, energy, effort to build a resilient BCDR for that environment. Um, and the component parts of what we've built are all the predecessors to future products, right? So if you start with the most difficult, most complicated, and iterate from there into a direct to cloud or a Azure backup or other ways that workloads are being where they're living, we have a long roadmap of products to build from this amazingly complicated and interesting foundation. Moreover, there's a large there's a large market for protecting servers, and if the products that are currently protecting servers continue as they are, in our view, they're going to fall further and further behind, and the MSP community will not be served by that. And so, again, going to the responsibility, the unfinished business, and the opportunity, we think we're at a unique place in time to build something from scratch that addresses core problems that MSPs need to solve for their clients.
Yeah. Well, this is very exciting, and there's obviously also the collaboration with ScalePad and Backup Radar on a bit of the management layer, the ticketing component. Some of this layer, I think, is a key piece to how MSPs interface with any product in their stack today. What were some of the thoughts around getting involved with Backup Radar at the outset to sort of manage some of this layer?
We admire the product. We thought it was incredibly forward-facing and useful for MSPs and well used and loved by your customers, your partners. And so we're interested in partnering with great companies. And so we found a great opportunity in the space to find an adjacency and a partnership. And so we immediately jumped on it as an
That's awesome.
opportunity.
I feel the same way. Back in the day, Austin, you were perhaps famous or infamous. I don't know, whichever you choose for the Stump the CEO Q&A sessions. And since my use of AI is perhaps the most pedestrian in this group, I thought I'd use AI to help me build a question to maybe stump the CEO, now the co-founder and chairman at Slide. So I wonder if you be so bold as to allow me to ask you a stump the CEO style question. That is all right. So how about you rethink backup strategies to ensure reliable protection of container-based workloads, especially stateful applications, given the challenges of cloud-native storage, the increasing hybrid maintenance or management that MSPs are doing out in the field, managing ephemeral container data, and what's the right balance between snapshot, streaming, or application-aware backups to minimize RTO and RPO?
Yeah. So we've always been in the world where we're not capturing application state. And the challenge is that every application has different ways of tracking and managing state. And so in Windows, which is primarily what we're serving for the MSP space, you use volume shadow copy, which is basically just a master service that's there so that each of these applications can then write their state to disk. And then we're going to capture those changes in disk. But Beyond that, like we're not going further into individual containers because like containerized workloads could be set up in an infinite number of ways, and so it's not really possible. If we're backing up VMs, you could snapshot them and like literally capture the RAM state, which is a possible way to do that. Um, but for our purposes, like we operate at the systems level, and that tends to be the space that most MSPs are operating at.
Yeah. And it's possibly a little different in the Mac space where a lot of that systems access is kind of non-existent anymore. How are you supporting Mac OS at the outset?
Not at the outset, no. And I think there it's like such a moving target. And the fact that like their disk encryption is much better implemented than Microsoft's. And so managing Mac backups where you're respectful of the disk encryption is hard. And you end up like creating all of these strange workarounds, and then the workarounds don't work the next iteration of the operating system. And Apple ships a new version of their operating system for free every 12 months. And so like that is a constant cat and mouse game. We would hope that they would provide better APIs, but they have not. And backup and DR just hasn't been something that they've made hookable in sort of an easy way for anybody.
Yeah. Well, I suppose as a lot of these workloads do move to hybrid environments or the cloud or to, dedicated storage, maybe it's less relevant. And increasingly people are working in the browser, I guess, to a large
Yeah.
extent. So I definitely see those trends driving a bit of, or diminishing the need for individual device backup, at least.
By and
Well,
large, most people don't back up individual devices, and like use of Macs as servers is like nil.
Right.
So much so that even Apple doesn't use Macs as servers. So they're just kind of clients, and that's not what anybody uses the BCDR products to protect. On the server-based workloads, like there's tons of them, and in Azure land, like those things are still servers. And by and large, like people are still thinking about them as servers, and it tends to actually be more affordable over the long run to do that, unless you have some app case that's like super, you know, light usage, in which case then you go serverless, but like that usually bites people over any sort of medium time frame.
So, what can you share about the long term roadmap on things like SaaS application backup? Because we know Datto made that Backupify acquisition, and the SaaS backup component was a critical piece that MSPs are managing. And so that's part one of the question. And part two is what other vectors of managing data do you think MSPs are going to encounter soon that you're maybe already thinking about?
So
I,
we're fundamentally we're a backup company, and so when you think about workloads that need to be and can be backed up, um, we're going there. Um, Also, there's a difference between a simple backup and a disaster recovery solution, and so there's that important distinction to be made there. In terms of other data management products for the future, I'll leave that to Austin to sort of try to answer. But I think that the number of ways in which number of places in which key business data lives um, are voluminous, and we have a lot of work ahead of us if we're just to remain a backup company.
yeah, I think that we're still building out a lot of the foundational technology, and that the next thing that you'll see from Slide, and it will roll out in phases, is an ability to abstract away a lot of the network challenges. And so the differentiations between on-prem, between hybrid, between servers that run in the cloud, servers that run in your office, restoring from the cloud, restoring from your office, restoring to someone's home, to be able to glue and support every different iteration of all of those pieces is something that we're very interested in. And that's always been a lot of really hard work. And we're lucky that we've got some really smart people and we've made some really smart foundational decisions that give us an ability to do a lot there and is going to unlock all kinds of different workloads available over Slide.
Well, it's very exciting, guys. I can't thank you enough for coming on to spend a little bit of time with me and chat about this new venture. I hope people are as excited as I am to see how things progress and launch as these first few weeks sort of get out of the secret phase and into the public phase. So congratulations, first of all, and thanks for the partnership with ScalePad and Backup Radar. What are you looking forward to the most over the next few months?
I think getting to tell the story, getting the feedback. It's hard to build products in secret because you can't ask people how they could be better. And so now we get to show people and be like, here's what we built, and we're going to get 1,000 answers of here's how it could be better. And then we get to go deliver on those things. And so getting that feedback cycle going is going to be really fruitful for us.
That's awesome. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, working with partners and having the privilege and having the opportunity to deliver a great experience for our customers, for our partners, is something that meant a lot to us in our prior lifetime, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to that. And so right now we're working with a select group of partners, and it's already been a great experience. It's better to give than to receive, in my view. And so that opportunity to provide that sort of better experience is an incredible privilege, and it's something that we're all very excited for.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again for joining me, folks. This has been Austin McChord and Michael Fass, co-founders of Slide, and you can be found on the interwebs at slide.tech, if I'm not mistaken. Check them out if you haven't already. And this has been MSP Confidential. We're here every Friday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Austin, Michael, thank you so much again, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you, Luis.
Thanks.